ML, but right now I'll talk a little bit about long-term planning for AI ML careers. So again, one really quick poll that I'm very curious about is, let's start with your goals. I'm curious, do you know exactly where you want to be, let's say 5 years out, or do you know, or you're completely unsure? Just select yes or no. Again, both are fine. Remember that it's okay not to know, but I'm curious to see how confident people are in their plans right now. So let's get the results up. Okay, it's actually a pretty even split. So we have about 38 people are saying yes, they know where they want to be 5 years out, and 62% are saying no. So that's more even than I expected. I expected like 85% no's. So very, very interesting there. So what's wonderful about those who do know is some of this will be a bit easier for you because the advice here, you do kind of have to at least have a hypothesis around where you want to go. But remember, if you don't have that, it's okay not to know. And it's also okay for plans to change. In fact, one of the things I'd like to do right now is walk through 4 real career paths. The names have been changed, the photos have been changed, but these are people that I've either hired or worked with or supported through the various one-on-ones in the past. And I just wanted to illustrate how career paths could look for people, and especially how different they could be over time. So let's start with Kathy. So Kathy is the head of ML for a fintech unicorn. She got her start with a PhD in physics. The very, very first thing she did was started a startup as a CTO. So it was the technical co-founder in this case. Eventually joined a fintech startup and moved from data science to engineering management. And there was a pretty big fork in the road for her where she had to decide at one point whether to stay in a management role in engineering, focusing on engineering management, or go back into data science. And in some ways, linear path, always going up and up and up, and then eventually deciding, actually, instead of engineering management, I'm going to go back into data science. A, what I love in this case, potentially, and B, something that maybe she was really good at. One thing to keep in mind, she ended up managing a smaller team, but I think is much more happy for it. Another example that is a little more linear as well is Bob, data science manager at Afang. So in this case, what I like about Bob's profile, excuse me, is where he initially started. Has an undergrad in commerce. A lot of data science roles will not necessarily hire commerce folks or business grads. And what I like about him is it was his patient approach initially to building that capability and skill set. Started as a business analyst, eventually got promoted to a data analyst role at a media company, then became a data scientist, and eventually a data science manager at a tech startup. One big fork in the road for Bob was whether to continue with startups and smaller companies, or take what I would call a title downgrade to work at Afang. It's very, very common for people who are moving from smaller companies to larger ones to take some sort of a downgrade. You might be a VP of data, let's say, or a CTO even at a startup that might be 30 people in size. But if you were to join something much larger, 1,000 or 10,000 employees, it's not like you're going to join to be the CTO there. And so it's very common to have to take that quote unquote hit. Some people really struggle with that. And this was a fork in the road for Bob. Today, data science manager at Afang. Now, 2 less linear paths. Shirley, VP of data science at a consumer tech company, also an undergrad in economics, spent the first few years working as an analyst in different firms, a consulting firm, cybersecurity company, large bank. And this is a good example of someone that would probably get a lot of criticism, frankly. And this comes up again in my one-on-ones with folks quite a bit, where this looks like someone who's meandering. Why are they switching jobs every 12 months? Are they getting fired? Are they not very good at what they're doing? Are they unsure of what they want? And maybe that's the case. Maybe the last case, especially, they're exploring different industries. And this is something that I wanted to share because Shirley's profile is one that shows that even though you start off potentially in a meandering path, you could end up in a really, really great roles, and you learn a lot by building that a treasure trove of expertise. First fork in the road was, do I get a master's degree? In her case, the answer was yes. The second fork in the road was, even with a technical master's degree, and stats in her case? Do I focus on business operations or stats? And she ended up going down the ops path of things. Had 4 roles in ops, focusing on customer data, and today she's at a VP of data science at a huge consumer products co. Obviously, I don't want to share names, but you've definitely used their products. And again, this is what I like, because if you were one of the people who voted no, you're not sure where you want to be, and maybe you even have a career path like Shirley's start here, where you're going through different companies or different roles, that's okay. You're going to learn a lot, and you're going to have some really great strengths and experiences you could leverage. Finally, Mike, PhD in comp sci, consultant, a team lead as well. Fork in the road was staying consulting or move client side. And again, similar to Shirley, moved to client side and then really swapped industries quite a bit. Behavioral analytics in real estate, marketing analytics in CPG, customer data and tech, and now a chief analytics officer in a pharma company. He was using a really interesting strategy that we'll talk about, which is this concept I call 1 foot in, 1 foot out. His core strength was customer data, right? Analytics, analyzing customer data, looking at trends, etc. But he was able to, with that strength, explore lots of different other spaces and build an area of expertise that is in some ways very, very unique, and which is why he's now the chief analytics officer. So as you noticed some of these paths, there's a few questions that are coming up. Should you be a technical expert or a manager? Should you maybe be working on-site or remote? A small company like a startup, or a big company where you might be lower on the food chain, so to speak, local, global. There's a whole bunch of these different questions that people are asking themselves. And I'll deep dive into some of these. The first one being the technical expert versus manager path. So this one in particular is one that comes up a lot, so I'll spend a little more time on it. People will often come out with data science, analytics, analyst type degrees, and a few years down the line, they'll have to make this decision, or it feels like they'll have to make this concrete decision of, do I go deeper and deeper on a specific technical topic, or do I work my way up in terms of team size, team management, managing people, etc. Both paths are great. Both paths can allow you to be very successful, and I'll show you examples of this. What I want to talk a little about first is the technical expert. So the story here, I think, if you're debating which one of these to be, the technical expert is a good one if you're really enjoying solving technical problems, architecting, designing solutions, and you want to double down on these skills. The starting point here is actually very similar to manager. You'll start as an analyst, as an engineer developer. Chances are you won't start in a more generalist role if you want to be a technical expert, just because it's hard to go from generalist to technical. The skills that you'll be focusing on are architecture, again, systems design, but also the qualities and skills you might be thinking about here are technical speed, mentoring people rather than managing them, and also focusing on optimization. So this is really about going really, really deep on very specific problems. And later I'll be talking about small versus big companies. I'll also say that big companies are generally better at supporting technical experts. You know, if you think about a company like Google, just, you know, a company we've all heard of, they have very, very, very niche roles that focus on search quality, that focus on ML engineering, that focus on chip design for their TPUs. That's an example where you could be a technical expert and really contribute quite a lot. Smaller companies generally need people who are a little more flexible. How to progress? The biggest thing I tell people here is, if you want to explore being a technical expert, take R&D risks. Commit to projects that are a little uncertain, where the R&D still needs to be completed. You're going to be taking a risk here because maybe the thing you're going to commit to doing is not possible or harder than expected. But the flip side is, if you're focusing on that R&D and producing good results, then you're gonna do really well. On the manager side of things, a little different in that the challenge here, the story that you're really looking for with yourself, is that you enjoy coordinating people, coordinating ideas, opinions, plans, etc. And one mistake people often make here in terms of expert versus manager is, oh, well, I'm introverted or I'm extroverted, so I'm either going to be, you know, extroverted equals manager, introverted equals technical expert. That's definitely not the case. There's a lot of really great introverted managers and leaders. There's a lot of really good extroverted technical experts. This is basically focused more on what is the problem that you want to solve and the energy that you want to expend to solving those problems. Again, starting points here, you'll notice, are the same, but the generalist roles are more likely to be on the manager path here. And skills, the other piece that you want to look for is, do you enjoy planning? Do you enjoy communication, facilitating meetings? Do you get a kick out of even almost having hypotheses about how meetings will go. And if so, then this is a great place to be. Whereas the technical expert focuses on optimization, the manager will often focus on things like shipping business results and working with people. And here, if you're thinking about maybe exploring the manager path, the thing that I would encourage you to do is take bigger risks around coordination. Commit to working with multiple stakeholders, commit to maybe running a meeting or facilitating an event or facilitating a meeting of some sort. See how you like it. At the end of it all, almost do a postmortem or debrief with yourself and see how you feel. The other thing that is really important for both roles, but in a different way, is this idea of organizational competence. When we start our careers, we typically have a technical background of some sort, whether that's programming or data science or AI research. We also have personal competence. We know how we work, we know how we operate. The one thing that we often don't have at the start of our careers is this ability, this thing that's called organizational competence. We don't necessarily know how to do collaborative problem solving because we haven't done that in a corporate environment. We don't know how to get things done by coordinating different parts of a company. And one of the things that I would recommend as you think about your career, challenge yourself to learn how to be competent in terms of getting the organization to do things. This means, again, understanding organizational dynamics, getting stuff done within a group setting, excuse me. And if you're a technical expert, this will probably focus more on that facilitation side of things, facilitating interesting projects, research, taking those R&D risks. On the manager side, the people manager side of things, it'll be much more focused on literal coordination of people and delegating or sharing tasks rather than doing it all yourself. Again, at the start of the career, our careers, we're usually individual contributors. We're doing the tasks that we're supposed to do. We're not delegating, we're not facilitating, we're not influencing. A few other things just to think that I'll go through a little bit more quickly. On-site and remote, this is coming up more and more, even although I think there was a sort of a reduction in remote roles post-COVID. I still think quite a few companies are focused on this. Both, again, are great. You could have a great remote career. You could have a great career on site. Obviously, that's been happening for decades. One of the things that I would really encourage you to think about here is how intentional are you comfortable being with your career? When you're on site, there's a lot of things that are happening around you that you could sort of just participate in. There's events, there's people talking, there's lunch meetings. You might just grab a coffee with folks that are nearby. If you're working remotely, all of this is still possible, but you have to be a lot more intentional about it. There's less opportunity for serendipity. And so if you are working remote, or if you're thinking about working remote, have a calendar reminder or something that regularly tells you to meet new people, reach out to someone that you haven't reached out to in the past, or even a part of the organization that you don't know very well, and do a virtual coffee or something like that. This is really important to build those relationships. And this is particularly true if you want to try things like facilitation or coordination, or find opportunities that might not be explicitly handed to you. Small co versus big co. This is a spectrum. Small co could be 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, sometimes could be considered a small company. And then you've got companies that might have thousands, tens of thousands of employees. Again, really big differences here. One of the things I recommend, similar to some of the career profiles that we looked at, if you're starting early, I actually recommend exploring both. Some people are really good at managing the politics and the challenges of a large organization. Some people really enjoy the flexibility and uncertainty of working in a small company. And if you've got co-op terms that are coming up, or if you're really literally entering your first role right now and have a few years still before you really want to make any decisions, spending a year at a small company, spending a year at a large company will show you just how different they are. And in a similar way, I mentioned for technical experts, for example, big companies often know how to use them a bit better. The one exception to this is really small, extremely technical companies. If you're working on a 10-person startup that's optimizing, I don't know, LiDAR or something, then obviously everyone's going to be a technical expert there. Big companies are also very good at structuring things like mentorship programs, training programs, etc. Small companies generally are a little more flexible. And the nice thing, flexible, maybe less formal training programs. On the flip side, you'll probably be exposed to different roles and tasks that you might not be exposed to otherwise. Local and global. This is one I think that's particularly unique to folks that are starting out, especially if you've got an international background. again, there's no right answer here, but working in a global environment comes with its own challenges, different cultures, a hybrid meetings, right? You'll have people on Zoom and you'll have people in the office, and global could mean different things. I'm going to say national is more on the global side, right? If you're meeting with folks from Halifax and Vancouver and you're based in Toronto, different cultures, different lived experiences there, and that'll be a really interesting opportunity to learn how to coordinate, influence people, deal with some of their challenges, etc. When you're local, and everybody's similar to each other, particularly in that local small co example, then you might actually take a lot of this for granted. You might assume that everybody's a LiDAR expert, and I can guarantee you they're not. So that's an example that you'll want to think about in some of the trade-offs that you'll want to explore. Now, if you do go through any of these different paths, the thing that I really want to emphasize here is that wherever you start, you could actually go in so many different directions. And so here's an example of 4 different job postings that have all been posted by the same company, looking for about 10 years of experience. So this is 10 years out from when you're starting off, but all in the product organization at this big company. So suppose that you have a master's degree in comp sci, you're starting your first job as an analyst of some sort, or maybe even a developer for this product-led division at a big company. 10 years out, starting at the bottom here, you might become a director of product engineering. This is, I think, the most obvious path that people do take, right? You're going to manage a team, you're going to manage shipping product and code, and they're going to look for experience doing that sort of thing. Maybe instead you realize that you're really good with customers and you're good with coordinating salespeople as well. In that case, maybe you'll become a lead solutions consultant. And in this case, you'll enjoy solving customer problems, enjoy architecting solutions and facilitation, but not management. So again, going to different team members, talking about product features, talking about customer needs, they're not reporting to you, but you're working with them in a slightly different way. Then on the more technical expert side of things, maybe you'll become a head of analytics, where you're going to be ensuring project delivery. You're going to be building dashboards. You're going to be analyzing the data to understand how users are using your product, and you're going to oversee that strategy. You're going to generate requirements for analytics, but you might actually be working on your own, similar to the solutions consultant, but more internal rather than external facing. And finally, maybe you'll become a staff data scientist. You'll have experience with R, Python, Julia. You'll be building and analyzing your own data sets, managing end-to-end projects. And one thing that I found really interesting here for this specific role is they're looking for someone who can speak and present on analytics. And this is that example I mentioned of introverted versus extroverted, right? If you enjoy speaking and presenting and collaborating, getting feedback, you might be very extroverted, but you might still decide to be a technical expert, i.e. a staff data scientist in this case, because you also enjoy doing data analysis. So again, personality types aren't always correlated with the roles themselves. If you are curious, if you're not sure where you fall when it comes to career paths, I highly recommend going to websites for companies that have thousands of employees and hundreds of open jobs, and filter specifically on people that are, or on roles, excuse me, that require 10 or 15 years of experience. And you'll see some of these different roles, and you'll see what those requirements are, what are the stories that people want to tell. And one other thing that I want to emphasize here, if you are thinking about this sort of thing, is as you progress through your career, your educational background and those technical things you did, courses, papers published, if you're switching from academia to the corporate world, will become less relevant in some cases, and the business results that you drive will become more and more relevant. So one other thing to keep in mind here is really drive business results as you're exploring and going through these career paths. So if I go back to Shirley, for example, one of the things that I like about her in relation to this sort of path is this focus where after her fork in the road, after fork in the road number 2, she spent a lot of time exploring roles. She had 4 different roles in operations, all focusing on customer data before deciding to double down on data science. And that exploration, again, is something that you could do by reading job postings and just deciding, no, that's not for me, or yes, this is exactly what I want to do. Or it could actually mean that the next 3 or 4 years, you might be in 2 or 3 different roles or work on different projects at your employer where you actually test this stuff out and see whether you truly want to do something or not. As you go through this process, the other thing that I want to keep in mind here is some of the leadership qualities that are almost universal. Again, they'll come up in different ways, whether you are a technical expert or whether you are like a manager, but one is architecture. And I put in brackets technical architecture because this could be systems, this could be organizational architecture. But the point is, as you progress through your career and develop your leadership capabilities, oftentimes many roles require you to be more of an architect, to oversee multiple things, to use the pattern recognition that you develop to actually address problems and work with people. The second is facilitating technical problem solving. And the operative word here is facilitation. As you get that experience as well, it's really important to learn how you can coordinate meetings, how you can coordinate brainstorms, work with different types of researchers or different types of roles in general so that you could address problems. As you work up that chain, you'll be less in the details of the day-to-day in terms of the specific sales calls or the specific product features or the specific bugs that are coming up. So that facilitation piece becomes really important. Similarly, communication, especially around simplifying deep, complex technical concepts. This is a superpower. There's so few people who can do this. And when you can actually take a complicated problem that no one understands and just simplify it, like forget solving it, just actually clarify what it actually means, you're already going to be very, very successful. And you could also practice this, by the way. One of the things that we recommend in our group sessions is to record yourself for 30 seconds explaining a difficult problem. You're on a time limit. You have to record yourself. You'll watch the video afterwards and you'll see whether what you said was clear at all. You could do that on your own. Finally, the other leadership quality is strategy, actually deciding what the long-term benefits, goals, challenges will be. So it's not just about getting a ticket and closing it. It's about thinking, okay, well, if this is the problem today, if we're, let's say, debating whether to architect our software using approach X versus Y, what are the long run impacts here? What happens a year from now, 2 years from now? Similarly, particularly within AI ML, R&D risk. Sure, it's easy to build that cool ChatGPT powered demo today, but how do we scale this? How much will it cost? Will it be expensive? One of the things that often comes up with Phase AI as we're working with different product organizations is the demos are quick, they're cheap, and because you're only making a few dozen API calls, and then the organization says, wait a second, if we scale this to 10,000 employees, this is going to be really expensive. How do we reduce the costs? That's something that you could have thought about literally on day one because the pricing is transparent and you could have solved yourself a lot of heartache. So that sort of strategic thinking is really, really critical. And again, something that you can certainly expose yourself to within your organization. Ways that you could do this, take step-up roles in your current job, networking, and keep looking for jobs. I encourage people to literally interview for roles, respond to recruiters if they reach out to you, because even if you're not interested in making the switch, learning what the opportunities are, what recruiters are looking for, what stories they want you to tell is really, really important. And the last piece that I want to emphasize here is volunteering, particularly early on in your career. I don't think enough people volunteer, to be perfectly honest. And what I mean by volunteering here is you can learn to do collaborative problem solving by getting involved in a nonprofit organization where you help with technical strategy. You could organize meetups. If you're thinking about a technical expert path and you're not sure how deep you want to get, you can volunteer for open source projects or even get involved in summer projects like Bloom or Aya. And so Bloom and Aya, in this case, for those who don't know, are LLM projects. Bloom was something that was run by Hugging Face, where hundreds, if not thousands, of researchers got together to build a large language model over the summer. Aya is coming out of Cohere, focusing on languages that are underrepresented in kind of more common LLMs. And Sea Lion is a similar example that's focusing on Indonesian, Malaysian languages, for example. So these are things where people are looking for volunteers. They need help, and you're going to get exposure to how to build an LLM, which is pretty cool. Open source software, same idea. You could look at LangChain, which started as an open source Discord community. They still have both the open source and the Discord piece. You could look at OpenAI's evals. I guarantee you that if you're exploring things like evals and contributing to evals with OpenAI, lots of people will want to talk to you. And there's many more projects that you can look on GitHub for. What I recommend is if you're thinking of doing this, look for projects that have active communities on Discord, Slack, whatever, and ones that have active contributors. You don't want to start contributing to a project that was shut down or is dying a slow death. And volunteering locally. Many nonprofits struggle with technology committees and finding people and helping with coding, website design, or just helping with the strategic decision making around these things is really important. And again, this is a great way to get jobs, or at the very least to put really interesting work experience on your resume. So I'm going to save this Q&A because we're at about 12:40, but I'll come back to to Q&A afterwards, and certainly with the panel.